Jaundice is very common in children nowadays, so we are going to handle it so that you can actually know where it comes from, how does it happen, and then of course how to prevent it, and if there is any treatment, how to treat it. But most importantly, I cannot talk about jaundice before I take you back. You know what we do here? We teach, so we learn something here. So I take you back, and I'm taking you back to one thing. I'm taking you back to bilirubin, because where do we get jaundice from? Jaundice is gotten from accumulation of a substance that is called bilirubin. And this bilirubin, where are we getting it from? That is what we'll have. This is the conversation that we're actually going to stage as we're going to talk about this jaundice condition. And I'm going to talk about jaundice in children so that I can actually educate mothers, new mothers, and those mothers who are thinking that this is actually, your child is actually bewitched. This is the evil eye. This is your bad neighbor who feels bad about your new child, or you've struggled to get pregnant for 5 years. Now you have a child and the child has jaundice. Now you start thinking, maybe my neighbors hate me. No wonder I wasn't getting pregnant. But now the child is here. What do we do when we have jaundice? And what is jaundice? Jaundice is that yellowing skin, yellowing eyes, and the mucous membrane, even the mouth surface. All these things become yellow, and you're wondering, where is this coming from? So tonight we're going to talk about that. Now, this animal called bilirubin is actually a waste product or a byproduct of breakdown of red blood cells. Remember this, that your red blood cells, they have a lifespan. Every cell in your body has a lifespan. And red blood cells have a lifespan of about 3 months, or 4 months thereabout, which is about 120 days to be specific. So if you count it at 120 days, you'll see we are getting to the 4 months period. So every time you have red blood cells in your system, they work, they do their job, they transport oxygen, and then at the end of it, their lifespan, they have to be destroyed because they are wasted. And the red blood cells has a component that carries the oxygen. Because red blood cells, you see the biconcave, okay? Remember the adaptation of the red blood cells? It has a biconcave surface to actually increase the surface area under which we carry oxygen. That's why when you have a sickle cell, we talked about sickle cell anemia. So when you have sickle cell or sickle-looking red blood cells, sickle-like looking red blood cells, the surface area under which oxygen is supposed to bind is now limited, and that's why these people who have sickle cell start to suffer, and the shortness of breath comes in, and difficulty in breathing comes in because of that. However, this is not alive for sickle cell. This is alive for jaundice and bilirubin. So in that red blood cell, the compound that actually binds oxygen so that the red blood cells can actually transport it is called hemoglobin. You've seen pregnant women saying, nimeenda kufanya HB. You've heard that? So what is that HB that you're going to test? HB is a hemoglobin test. So that means how much hemoglobin do you have in relation to how much oxygen you can transport throughout the system. So when your HB is high, now you are able to transport adequate oxygen to your cells and your system in general. So this hemoglobin, which is in the red blood cells, is where we are getting bilirubin from. And how? Now, you have produced red blood cells from the bone marrow. They have served their purpose. 120 days are here. They've been marked that these ones are wasted, so we have to destroy them. Now, these red blood cells are destroyed in 2 organs. One is the spleen. The other one is the liver. And the liver plays a very primary role in bilirubin metabolism. So it's also playing a very important role in healing or in getting jaundice. So now understand this. So the liver and the spleen are the ones that actually break down these red blood cells. They destroy the wasted red blood cells. But when you break down the red blood cells, you produce something called the heme. Okay, so hemoglobin has 2 things. It is the globin part. Just separate the name into 2. Heme and globin. So when you break down red blood cells, you release hemoglobin, and then this hemoglobin is broken down into 2. We have the heme, and then we have the globin. The globin is the protein. It is taken back into the system for recycling to form new hemoglobin. But the heme part, which is the iron part, because you've heard people saying, you know what, if you have low blood levels, you have iron deficiencies, okay? Or now you need ranferon to boost your iron levels. And we talked about that again. So this heme part is the one that is actually metabolized to release bilirubin. So we started with red blood cell. Inside we had hemoglobin. We broke the hemoglobin to release heme and globin. We recycled the globin part because it's the protein part. So it goes back for recycling to form new hemoglobin. And now we're remaining with the heme. And this heme is the one that is broken down, and the waste product or the byproduct of breaking down this heme, bigger part of it is bilirubin. Now, sit back and enjoy this lecture. Reflect on that statement before I take you through. So when I mention bilirubin, some of you start thinking, oh, then bilirubin is a problem. It's the one that is making us have these problems. But bilirubin has positive effects in the system. It actually plays a very important role in the system. One of the roles of bilirubin is actually anti-inflammatory. So it actually plays an anti-inflammatory role in the system. And number two, it protects your heart and your nervous system. So realize this, that this is the recent research about bilirubin. So we used to know that bilirubin is the devil and it can actually destroy us, until research came out identifying things like bilirubin to be anti-inflammatory, and then they are cardioprotective, which means they protect the heart, and also it is neuroprotective, protects nerves and the central nervous system. But above all, it actually boosts your immune system. And then I want you to see this. So it can actually suppress your autoimmune, because in some autoimmune conditions, bilirubin levels are so low. But bilirubin, apart from those roles that have been identified recently, bilirubin wasn't that much of a good thing, so it has to be excreted from the body. However, immediately you break the heme into bilirubin, this bilirubin that you've made is actually called the unconjugated bilirubin. Now, I don't want you to cram names. I want you to know, when something is conjugated, it means the liver has actually formulated it in a way that is soluble in water so that it can leave the body. Because if it is soluble in water, it can leave the body through urine. If it's not soluble in water, it cannot leave the body. So if it's not soluble in water, it means it is soluble in fat. We either have fat soluble or water soluble. So if it is conjugated, when the liver conjugates it, it makes it soluble in water so that we can excrete it, so that it doesn't accumulate. Now, when it's still fat soluble, it is accumulating in the system. That tells you that the unconjugated bilirubin is the one that is going to bring you more problems. To a smaller extent, the conjugated one, which is supposed to leave the system, can bring you problems if you block the excretion pathway of this. And we'll talk about that when we'll be talking about the complications of these and what causes jaundice. So now you have hemoglobin, you've broken it down, you've released the heme. Now heme is taken all the way to the liver, because now you've made the bilirubin. So you want this bilirubin to leave the system, because that's what needs to happen. The red blood cells were worn out, we've released the heme is converted to bilirubin, and this bilirubin has to leave the system because it's non-important anyway. So it's carried all the way to the liver, and in the liver, it's where it's actually now made water soluble so that it can leave the system. Now, if you're bright, you're already starting to realize that people who have jaundice have an accumulated bilirubin, because this bilirubin is the one that carries the yellow color. So people who have conditions that affect the liver, so the fatty liver disease, the cirrhosis, the hepatitis, already they will suffer jaundice because they are unable to metabolize. That conjugation is what we call metabolism. They are unable to metabolize and excrete excess bilirubin. Okay? So we are taking bilirubin to the liver so that it can be made water soluble, so that it can now leave the system. I hope we've understood up to there. If it is staying in the system as a fat soluble bilirubin, which is unconjugated, you're going to get jaundice. Now look at the infants, the children. When they are born, their livers are not yet functional, right? So if the liver is not functional, that means they are unable to break down these bilirubin and excrete it through urine. Because bilirubin is supposed to leave the system through urine and through stool. And I will tell you an interesting story about bilirubin and how it goes and forms the color of stool and forms the color of urine. But let's go slow. So we've taken it from hemoglobin, converted hemoglobin into heme and globin, recycled globin, carried this heme into converting it all the way to bilirubin. And now this bilirubin is fat soluble, but if it's fat soluble, it's going to hurt the system. So we have to transport it all the way to the liver. And now the liver makes it water soluble so that it's excreted through urine or through stool. Okay. However, after making it water soluble, this bilirubin does not just leave the system instantly. It has to be stored somewhere. And now it is stored in the gallbladder together with bile. Hello? People who have gallbladder problems, you start having problems here already. So if you have your gallbladder chopped off, you see the problem. If you have a fatty liver, you see the problem. And if you have ducts that actually pass this bile out, that pass this bilirubin out, there's a problem. You start making it go up, topping on the levels in the system, and now you start experiencing it because now comes under the skin and is in blood all over, and your mucous membrane are turning yellow, your urine is turning dark, your stool has this pale color. Now you realize now that is jaundice. So you can easily diagnose jaundice by just physical observation. Look at the eyes, are they pale? Look at the skin, does it look yellow and very, very light? Look at the stool color. What is the stool color? The color of the stool, is it pale? Look at the urine color, is it dark? When you have that, please run the liver function tests so that you can see how much bilirubin is in this system. Okay? Now, after you've conjugated bilirubin, you've made it water soluble, you've stored it in the gallbladder awaiting excretion. This is what happens. This bilirubin that is called now conjugated bilirubin leaves the gallbladder through the biliary system, those ducts, the hepatic duct and the bile duct, and goes and joins the pancreatic duct. You remember when you said bile leaves the gallbladder and comes into the small intestines together with the pancreatic juice and is released into the duodenum through that hole that is called the sphincter of Oddi. Kenyans, sphincter of Oddi. There's that hole that actually opens up the pancreatic duct and the bile duct into the small intestines. So if you have occlusion of this bile duct and occlusion of the pancreatic duct, you have problems already. Again, if you have pancreatitis, so you see all the organs that are involved in metabolism and excretion of bile and metabolism and excretion of bilirubin, all those organs, if they are affected, you have problems. This is why alcoholism is a serious problem, because one, alcoholism messes up the gut, problems. Two, alcoholism causes pancreatitis, so inflammation of the pancreas, problems. Three, alcoholism causes hepatitis and inflamed liver, problems. So all the way from the liver, from the gut into the system to the liver and now to the gallbladder and all the way to the pancreas is actually affected. So alcohol is just a no. And I know there are people who will defend this by telling me, oh, you know what, I take wine and it's good for the stomach. Alcohol is alcohol, just the same way fruits and sugars, regardless of the source. Alcohol is alcohol, whether scotch, whiskey, wine and spirit, whatever, or beer or wine, all of them are just alcohol. The only difference is the percentage. So drop alcohol, it has no benefit in your system at all. So now you have a pancreatitis, now you're affecting the excretion of this conjugated bilirubin, and now it starts to accumulate, causing you jaundice. And let me tell you this, jaundice is a very serious condition when it's left to last longer, because most of these conditions like jaundice, they last about 2 weeks and the body does away with them without even using medication. So the liver is just activated, breaks them down, they leave the system through urine and stool. But if you constantly destroy these organs and you let bilirubin to accumulate in the system, and you let it last there for long, there is a condition that is called 𝐂𝐀𝐔𝐍𝐃𝐈𝐂𝐄. 𝐂𝐂𝐃𝐔𝐍𝐃𝐈���𝐃 is a condition where buildup of this bilirubin starts to affect the brain, starts to affect the muscles, starts to affect the heart and all these organs. So the central nervous system, the heart, the muscles, and even the kidneys, they start getting affected. And even cerebral palsy. So 𝐂𝐂𝐃𝐔𝐍, part of 𝐂𝐂𝐃𝐔𝐍 is actually the complication of 𝐂𝐂𝐃𝐔𝐍 is cerebral palsy. So imagine that. So you can ignore it at this moment in time, but as it goes further, it becomes problematic to you. It can actually destroy you, and it causes nerve problems, nerve damage. It causes the brain damage. So therefore, an IQ goes down in these children. It causes muscle wasting, causes heart problems. Okay, so a lot of things are involved in just maintaining this bilirubin in the system. So it should leave the system. Okay, now you understand that. So now you've made this bilirubin soluble. It has now gotten into the small intestines, all the way from the liver to the gallbladder to the pancreatic duct and the bile duct into the small intestines. Now here is going to encounter the gut microorganisms, the bacteria in the gut. We said in your gut you have good bacteria and bad bacteria, and the good bacteria are supposed to help you, regulate the population of the bad bacteria, and also they are part of your immune system. So now you have taken these bilirubin into the small intestines and it has to leave through stool. However, these microorganisms work on this bilirubin and they convert it into different things so that it gets excreted. So the major percentage of this bilirubin leaves through stool. And guess what? It is the one that gives the stool the greenish brown color. Okay, so when you have this color in stool, you know that is now a breakdown of red blood cells. So actually your color of stool is actually given out by the breakdown of red blood cells that yield bilirubin. Imagine that. So in the intestines, what you're going to do is this conjugated bilirubin is acted upon by the intestinal bacteria and is converted to something that is called urobilinogen. I'm going slowly so that you can actually write that word down if you can. Urobilinogen. That word uro is intentional there because it's going to give urine color. So understand that. So urobilinogen. So we now moved from conjugated bilirubin to urobilinogen. And this tells you if you don't have the gut microorganisms, the good population of gut microorganisms, it shall be a problem in excretion of, again, bilirubin. So every time I sing here, oh, fix your gut, fix your gut, fix your gut, fix your gut, and you ignore, look at the effects that is bringing. Apart from malabsorption, malnutrition, now look at the problem that's now you're going to get into. You're going to get into jaundice. Imagine that. Anyway, so these gut microorganisms convert bilirubin to urobilinogen. Now that urobilinogen has two pathways. One, it is reabsorbed into the bloodstream. Okay, so the gut wall reabsorbs it back into the bloodstream. And when it gets into the bloodstream, you might think it's going to do a very important role. No way. It's just going to circulate in the system, causing you more trouble, and then ends up in the kidneys because now there is where blood is filtered. So some way, somehow, it will end up in the kidneys. So you've released bilirubin from the liver into the small intestines, and now the gut microorganisms are acting upon this bilirubin to actually help you excrete it faster so that you don't get jaundice. And now look at children who are born through CS. They have very poor gut microbiome. Look at children who consume wheat, sugars, and all this. They have very bad gut microorganisms. Look at children who have never breastfed. They are put on milk formulas. Very problematic guts. Now they are unable to excrete bilirubin because it cannot be converted to urobilinogen. And now you wonder why your child has jaundice. But you've been feeding this child with cereals, with pasteurized milk, with sugar in form of ice cream, chocolates, and cakes, wheat products, fruits that are genetically modified. All these things are affecting the gut microorganisms in your child's gut. And now they are unable to break down this bilirubin to excrete it through stool. And now it starts to build up in the system. They end up getting jaundice. They end up getting low IQ. They end up getting nervous problems and cerebral palsy. And you're wondering, what happened to my child? Why is my child not grasping anything in class? Why is my child drooling every now and then? From morning to evening, the child is just drooling saliva. We're actually feeding the diseases. So stop giving your children these inflammatory foods. Anyway, let's continue. So now you have converted bilirubin into urobilinogen. Now, one of the roles of this urobilinogen is going to be converted to something called stacobilin. Do not cram the words, but know this. Bilirubin to urobilinogen to stacobilin. Stacobilin is the green color of the stool, the green-brown color that gives stool the color. So that's one way of excreting it. Once you've converted it into that platform, now it leaves the system through stool. Perfect one, right? But the other one that has been reabsorbed into the bloodstream, remember that one is urobilinogen. It has been taken up by the system, it has gone into the bloodstream, found its way to the kidneys. When it's filtered, it now leaves the kidneys through urine, and that is what we call urobilin. So urobilinogen to urobilin, and now that gives urine the yellow color. Oh, amazing. So listen, two things, the end products of breakdown of red blood cells in your system. One is stacobilin to give stool the color. The other one is urobilin to give urine color. Amazing story. And now some of you, when you go to a doctor, they run a urine test, the color is a little conk, and the doctor thinks you are dehydrated. It tells you to drink more water. You drink more water, nothing is happening. Check the liver. Check the gut microbiome. Check if there is any condition. Check for anemia. For example, hemolytic anemia. And even children suffer from this hemolytic anemia. You've heard of the rhesus problem, where the mother has a rhesus difference with the father, and now the child suffers the consequence. Okay? So hemolytic disease of the newborn. Some of you have hemolytic anemia. People who have malaria, where the malaria parasite is actually breaking down the red blood cells, releasing the hemoglobin. A lot of heme is being released in the system. You see what is going to happen? If we don't have an active liver, if we don't have an active kidney, if you don't have an active pancreas, if your bile ducts are actually blocked, jaundice is coming in, 𝐂𝐇𝐔 is coming in, problems with the brain, the nervous system, the heart, and all these strokes that are coming in as a result of just accumulating bilirubin. That is now the metabolic pathway. So this is for the medical students. That is the metabolic pathway of bilirubin. You will never suffer. You will not miss out on a mark when you just follow that program. It is simple and well explained. Now, if you've understood the metabolic pathway, let's go back and think about what are the causes of this increasing bilirubin in the system. Because if it is increasing, we are getting the jaundice. So what caused the accumulation of this in the system? One of the things that can cause this, of course, already if you are here, you know, one is a liver problem. That is a major pathway. Mickey is asking, why is jaundice so common in newborn babies? Now, newborn babies are born with a liver that is not as active as you. Okay, newborn babies are born with an inactive liver, so they have to survive before the liver picks up. And now if they're overwhelmed with the bilirubin, so their blood cells are being broken down so fast, they have maybe a hemolytic anemia, now they end up having all these problems with jaundice. So it's about their liver, okay? And then also, I'll tell you this for free. Your grandmother or your mother was not stupid to air you out in the sun. Because the sun, the UV radiation, when they hit the skin of the child, they help in metabolism of this bilirubin. That's the reason why newborn babies who are born prematurely, when they are born prematurely and they have jaundice, they are put through certain light that is called phototherapy. We'll see it when we're talking about management. So phototherapy, what it does is there's a certain ray, a certain wavelength of rays that when they hit the skin, they activate breakdown of bilirubin, and is now excreted through urine and through stool, and that's how they survive. And there are babies who are born immediately. They are born 2 days of life, they are getting jaundice already. And also, there is a component in breast milk. I'll not mention the name because it is still under study. There's a component in breast milk that can actually block the metabolism of bilirubin. So breast milk can actually be also another problem in these children. However, breast milk from a mother who has been feeding on crappy diets. Don't start creating excuses. Oh, you know what? Now breast milk is a problem. Now I have to feed my child with milk formula. Just remember, milk formula is going to mess your child's gut, and this child will be unable to metabolize bilirubin. Okay? They will be unable. Now they'll have problems. So you would rather prefer the one that is in the breast milk, because breast milk does not affect the gut microorganisms. If any case, it adds up to the good bacteria in the gut of the child.